Hi, everyone. Good to see you again. I'm really glad you're here today. When over the weekend, while I was raking leaves outside my house, just me, the cold air, and a rake that definitely needs to be replaced, I found myself thinking about something that every investor eventually faces. Those moments when the market shakes your confidence a little bit, when you open your portfolio and you see red again, and you start wondering, is this the beginning of something worse? Am I holding the wrong thing? Should I just get out now before it drops even more? And you know what? That small, quiet fear, that's exactly what brings us into today's conversation. Because lately I've been getting the same question from so many people. Is MST becoming the next ULTY? And honestly, I get why people are asking. The numbers don't look pretty. MST is down nearly 70% from its 52-week high. Its distribution was cut from 66 cents to 45 cents. And when you see charts going downhill, your instinct tells you to panic. I've worked with investors in the US for many, many years, from retirees in Florida to software engineers in California, even younger folks just trying to build their first portfolio. And trust me, this emotional roller coaster is universal. It doesn't matter how experienced you are. Red is red. It touches something deep inside us. But here's what I want to share with you, sincerely, before we dive any deeper. Not every drop means disaster, and not every dip turns a fund into another ulti. Let me explain. Some of you may remember what happened with ULTY. Their distributions didn't just decrease, they collapsed. We're talking about a fund that once paid more than $1.50 a month, dropping down to just a few cents. Their stock price fell more than 80% from the peak, and their distribution fell 81%. That wasn't a correction. That was a structural failure. Something broke inside the engine. But MST, the situation is different, and I don't say that lightly. I say that because I've watched these markets for decades, studied cycles, talked to analysts, and seen these patterns repeat more times than I can count. MST's distribution dropped 32%. That's painful, sure, but it's nowhere near the structural collapse we saw with ULTY. And here's the thing, experienced investors understand. A drop in distribution during a high volatility period doesn't automatically signal a broken model. Sometimes it's simply the system adjusting, rebalancing, resetting itself. A friend of mine who manages institutional portfolios once told me something I'll never forget. He said, "The market is like the tide. When it pulls back, it's not abandoning you. It's making space for the next wave." And honestly, he's right. Because if you zoom out a little, the bigger picture becomes clear. MST is tied closely to MicroStrategy. And MicroStrategy itself is tied even more closely to Bitcoin. And Bitcoin, well, that's a whole different ocean. I don't know where you were when Bitcoin hit its all-time high at $126,000. But I remember sitting at my desk, watching the charts light up like fireworks. And today, it's somewhere around $84,000. That's a 32% drop. Significant, absolutely, but still nowhere near the end of a cycle. Crypto has always been cyclical. It rises, it falls, it rises again. It breathes in and out like the market's wild, unpredictable heartbeat. MicroStrategy follows the same beat. Their stock is down about 60% from their high. And you don't need me to tell you that it's not because their software business suddenly fell apart. Everybody knows what drives that stock, their Bitcoin exposure. And because MST mirrors that movement, it rises with them, and yes, it falls with them too. But here's what many people overlook, and what I want you to really think about. There are analysts projecting MicroStrategy heading back to the $480 to $520 range. Some even stretch as far as $700 or $1,000. If Bitcoin breaks above the $200,000 mark, is that guaranteed? Of course not. But is it within the realm of possibility? Given crypto's historical behavior? Absolutely. And if MicroStrategy does return to those levels, MST breaking past $20 again isn't just wishful thinking, it becomes a realistic scenario. But let me say this clearly. This is not a prediction. This is perspective. Perspective gained from watching markets move through cycles for decades, from seeing fear push people to sell too early, and patience reward those who understood what they were holding. I had a subscriber write to me last week. They said, "I'm scared. I'm thinking of selling everything. Maybe this isn't for me." And I asked them a simple question, the same question I want to ask you right now. Are you reacting or are you deciding? Because decisions are made with clarity. Reactions are made with fear. I'm not telling you what to do. That's not my job. My job, and what I hope this channel gives you, is a way to see things clearer, a way to understand the story behind the numbers, the psychology behind the charts, the big picture behind the noise. So today, as we dive deeper into MST, ULTY, MicroStrategy, and Bitcoin, I want you to keep one thing in mind. A temporary storm does not define a permanent future. And sometimes the smartest move you can make is simply not to panic. All right, let's get into it. Now, let's dig a little deeper into this. Because if we really want to understand where MST might be heading, we can't just stare at the chart and panic. We have to understand the mechanics, the story behind the numbers. And I want to start with something simple, context. Every stock, every fund, every ETF lives inside a bigger story. And MST's story isn't a mystery. It's tied directly to MicroStrategy. And MicroStrategy's story is tied directly to Bitcoin. And here's what many investors forget. When you invest in something connected to Bitcoin, even indirectly, you're stepping onto a roller coaster with no seatbelts, but with an amazing view if you hold on long enough. Let me show you why. 1. MST's decline is meaningful, but not alarming if you understand its nature. When people see MST down 70%, the first reaction is fear. Of course it is. But we need to separate two things: volatility-driven decline, structural decline. Loyalty suffered a structural decline. Their distribution model imploded. Their ability to pay consistent income broke. That's why their numbers didn't just fall, they evaporated. But MST? Their distribution dropped 32%. That's a correction, not a collapse. And if you've invested through 2008, or the COVID crash, or even the tech pullback last year, you know this. Many of the best performing assets today once fell 50 to 70%. Amazon did. Tesla did. Bitcoin did. Multiple times. A drop doesn't kill value. A broken model does. And MST's model? It's bruised, not broken. 2. MicroStrategy is the heartbeat, and Bitcoin is the oxygen. Let me put it this way. If MicroStrategy sneezes, MST catches a cold. If MicroStrategy trains for a marathon, MST gets stronger too. And MicroStrategy's real engine? It's Bitcoin. MicroStrategy's business revenue is almost irrelevant at this point. And I don't say that to be dramatic. The market values the company almost entirely based on its Bitcoin holdings. That's why MSTR fell 60%, not because their CEO forgot how to run a company, but because Bitcoin fell 32%. Imagine you owned a house on a beach. Every time the tide rises or falls, the value of the house changes. The house isn't broken, the ocean just moves. Bitcoin is that ocean. And every time the tide rises, MicroStrategy rises even faster. And every time MicroStrategy rises, MST catches fire too. So, what does this mean for you? It means you're not holding a broken stock. You're holding a cyclical asset that breathes with the crypto market. 3. The analysts aren't panicking. And that matters. I spent the last few days reading analyst notes. Not the clickbait headlines, but the real institutional reports. And there's something interesting happening. Most analysts place MicroStrategy's potential rebound range around 485 to 524. A few outliers go even further, 700 to 1,000. Now let's stay grounded. Those higher numbers require Bitcoin crossing $200,000, a milestone that could happen but isn't guaranteed. But here's the part people should pay attention to. None of the analysts are treating MSTR like a collapsing company. Not one says the model is broken. Not one says abandon ship. Instead, they're all pointing to one thing: Bitcoin's cycle. And if you've been around this market long enough, you know the truth. Crypto cycles repeat, not perfectly, but consistently. 4 years up, 1 to 2 years down. And then, a surge that breaks the old ceiling. It's been happening for over a decade. And MST is simply riding that wave, whether you like the ocean or not. 4. Let's talk psychology, because that's where most investors lose. You know, one of the most fascinating things I've learned from working with both wealthy investors and beginners is this. People don't lose money because their investments fail. They lose money because their emotions fail. Think about that for a moment. Most people sell right at the bottom, not because the asset is worthless, but because they can't stand the pain anymore. A retiree I coached a few years ago sold his entire tech portfolio in the middle of the COVID crash. He told me, "I just couldn't handle watching it fall anymore." 6 months later, those same stocks were up over 100%. He missed the entire recovery, not because he chose wrong investments, but because he reacted at the wrong time. And that's what I want you to really reflect on today. Ask yourself, am I investing because I believe in the long-term story? Or am I reacting because I'm afraid of the short-term noise? Fear is human, but clarity is powerful. And clarity comes from understanding what you're holding, not just what the chart is doing this week. 5. So, where does MST go from here? I wish I could tell you the exact date when Bitcoin will rebound. I wish I could tell you when MicroStrategy will hit $500 again. I wish I could tell you whether MST will break $20 this year, next year, or later. But I can't. And anyone who says they can is lying. What I can tell you is this: MST is behaving exactly as expected in a down cycle. Its distribution drop is not comparable to ULTY's collapse. MicroStrategy remains structurally strong. Bitcoin still drives the entire ecosystem. Cycles repeat, and the next one will come. The real question isn't, will MST recover? The real question is, will you still be holding it when it does? Because recovery doesn't reward the fearful, it rewards the patient. So, as we wrap this up today, I want you to take a breath with me. Just one. Slow. Deep. Because sometimes the market doesn't just test your portfolio, it tests your patience, your discipline, your courage. And if no one has told you this lately, let me be the one to say it. You're doing better than you think. Investing isn't about being fearless. It's about learning to move forward even when fear is sitting right next to you. Now here's what I want you to take away from everything we talked about. MST is not ULTY. One is correcting, the other collapsed. Those are two very different stories. MicroStrategy isn't broken. It's just breathing with Bitcoin, the same way it always has. And Bitcoin, it's not gone. It's not dying. It's just waiting for the next cycle, like it has every single time. But the most important part of this entire conversation isn't MST or MicroStrategy or Bitcoin. It's you. It's your mindset, your reactions, your ability to understand what you own and why you own it. A mentor of mine years ago said something I never forgot. The market doesn't reward people who are right. It rewards people who stay. And that's the truth. Look, maybe you're tired. Maybe you're frustrated. Maybe you're wondering if this whole investing thing is worth it. But let me tell you something. From decades of guiding American investors through every kind of storm you can imagine, the moment you want to give up is usually the moment right before it turns around. Hold your ground. Think long term. Stay rational in an irrational world. And remember this. Truly remember it. A temporary dip is not a permanent destiny. Now, before we end today's video, I want to ask you something. Not as a financial expert, not as a YouTuber, but simply as someone who has seen investors grow from doubt to confidence. What's the biggest fear you're dealing with in this market right now? Is it the volatility? Is it the uncertainty? Is it the feeling of losing control? Tell me in the comments. I read everything, and I want to help you navigate this with clarity, not fear. And if today's video gave you perspective, if it helped you breathe a little easier, then go ahead and hit that like button because it really helps the channel reach more people who need this message. If you're new here, consider subscribing. We talk about investing the way real people experience it, with honesty, with depth, and with a little bit of hard-earned wisdom. And of course, turn on notifications so you don't miss the next update. The market might be unpredictable, but this channel won't be. Thank you for spending your time with me today. Take care of yourself. Take care of your money. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.